We are here with Joe Ferlo of the Grand in Oshkosh. A beautiful theater if you've never been. It's an incredible sight looking at it from the stage. And you guys have a special show coming up. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, pretty excited about it. Wonderful, talented group of people that call themselves the Four Phantoms in Concert. And it's a tribute to the Phantom of the Opera with a lot of other Broadway tribute involved. It's a wonderful show, period. But over the years, as we've developed our relationship over return engagements, we've gotten to the point where now we're preparing for a wonderful spotlight for the Grand itself, as the Phantoms have chosen the Grand to be the site for a taping of a public television special by American Public Television.
Talk a little bit about how the relationship with the Phantoms has developed.
It all started, actually, almost where you and I are right now. The first of the organization that I knew was Frank D'Ambrosio. Frank has, all of these guys actually do have lovely solo careers as well. He and I were center stage. He'd come in and we were getting ready for the show. We were just chatting. It was him and me and the Ghost Light. And Hunter, his pup. And he was commenting on how beautiful the theater is. And Frank has very famously said, which is something I never miss an opportunity to quote, Frank, who has toured all over the world and sung in some of the finest opera houses in Europe, has said frequently, and often from this stage, that the Grand is the finest theater acoustically that he's sung at in America. And he was saying something along those lines and very kind. And I said, you know, Frank, I understand you're working on a project. I said, now I have no business trying to make that work in this theater. But wouldn't it sound great? And he looked at me and he picked up his cell phone right here, and he called Lee Toffanelli, the producer of the Four Phantoms, and he said, you know, we got to find a way to bring the Phantoms here. I want you to meet Joe, and let's see what we can do. And of course, if you go look at the Four Phantoms now, they're playing 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 seat theaters all over the country. Even now, as they ramp up to their performance here in Oshkosh. That's their wheelhouse. And the idea that we were going to shoehorn that into this theater was audacious. I had no business thinking that it was even possible. Lee gave it some thought, and he's a real creative guy. And he said, let's see what we can do. So the first hurdle was there. And the second was to take this show built for a stage twice this size and an auditorium 3 times, 4 times this size, and to translate it without losing any of the integrity and the artistic qualities of the show. So it needed to be tailored, and he did it all. They did it all. They all did it. And when it was done, it was like, shaking a Coke can. You just compressed all of that energy onto this stage with that audience right there, and it just exploded. And I did something that I rarely get to do. I sat and I just watched every night. I don't think I missed a performance. I'd like to take credit for that first conversation, but the fact is it's Oshkosh and it's this room that won them over. They've enjoyed their performances and their time here and the time in our community. It's quite a cool thing. And they're all good at that. Kieran and Brent Barrett and Frank D'Ambrosio and John Cadilla. They're all fabulous ambassadors as well as performers. And part of the charm of the show, of course they have killer voices. They have the chops, they have the resumes. But they really enjoy being on stage with each other. So there's a whole camaraderie and brotherhood and that happens in the course of the show that you don't get to normally see. And it's really a kick when you think these are 4 guys who are used to being the star, who are singing harmony and backup for each other and having a great time doing it. So the idea that, the first part of the show is each of them kind of talking about another special thing in their career and then highlighting it musically. So you get into some of the other Broadway songbooks, Frank was in a little movie called Godfather Part 3, happened to have sung the title tune. And so, that's a great story to tell. Brent's the longest running Billy Flynn in Chicago on Broadway. Kieran has a wonderful, in addition to his wonderful theatrical stories, his origin story, his being mentored by Harold Prince is just a fabulous story to him. Probably giving away the whole show here. You still got to get a ticket. They tell the story better than I do. And John Cadilla is the only actor alive, as we sit here talking today, who's ever played the Phantom and Jean Valjean on Broadway. And then Kaylee Voorhees, when she debuted in The Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, she was, I think, 20 years old. She was the youngest to play the role of Christine. And if you follow the trivia here, she was the first Christine who was born after The Phantom of the Opera had opened on Broadway.
Oh,
So they all have a backstory and a fun story, and they all get along so well, and it's wonderful. And the band, Ryan Sherrar, the music director, is just otherworldly in the way he holds the whole thing together and arranges stuff. The production team they bring, it's not just the stars on stage. They're bringing in a full production team: the light guy, the sound guy, the technical director, the operations of the whole thing. We have no idea, as the audience for this event, just how lucky we are to have this relationship in this community, in this town, on this little stage with this organization. I mean, it's never lost on me. The public television special has been something on the horizon from the start. At the time I met and got to know the organization, they were talking about maybe we'll do it in Las Vegas, where Brent Barrett opened the theater there. Maybe we'll do it in Atlantic City. Maybe we'll do it in Florida. Maybe we'll do it, on the West Coast. There's this scene in It's a Wonderful Life where Jimmy Stewart's on the phone with Donna Reed talking to his buddy, his high school buddy, Sam Wainwright. And Sam's going to open a factory. He's trying to get Jimmy Stewart to invest in the factory. And he's going to build a factory somewhere. And Jimmy Stewart says, well, why don't you do it right here in Bedford Falls? We've got the old mill, and you could do it for half the cost of whatever along the way. That's what I felt like. What if we did it in Oshkosh, in this place? And the beauty of the theater was never the question. The age of the theater, it's 140 years old. Logistics of doing the show here was the sticking point. But over time, it became more logical. And then it became an artistic choice. And that's when the rest of it kind of fell into place. Because you got to figure, as we sit here, the orchestra pit cover will be off, and there'll be a camera tracking in the back and getting audience shots and those shots along the way. Most of the theatrical lighting and sound here is going to either move or be removed for the television lighting that has to happen. And that includes, for lack of a better word, beauty lighting. This theater is beautiful, but like most theaters, it's a little dark. So the idea of showcasing the theater, that's just part of the appeal. I mean, it's going to be an absolutely crazy week-long transformation. Well, now you talk about bringing in a public television crew. There's another army of people who are going to be here all week, and the production truck and the cables. Friday and Saturday are the taping nights. So that's going to be kind of a show within a show. But if you feel like that's going to be distracting and you want to watch the Four Phantoms, that's the spot where you can feel, that pesky, public television special taping won't be affecting your night. All the places it could have happened, and all the historic theaters, even if they wanted that atmosphere, that it might have happened. And I think about the fact that they chose here. Feels pretty good. It always affects me. Usually when it affects the audience is when it affects me. And that could be, frankly, a High School Musical. We have 2 of those a year. And those are, that's where the bug bit me way back when in historic theater. It was when I was doing High School Musicals in a historic theater. So I look at those kids and I'm like, are they the next person who gets to do what I do? It's nice to go, ooh, I'm the director of the Grand, right? Ooh, I've been the director of the Grand for almost 20 years. And then you go, okay, that's about 14% of the history of the Grand. I'm just the current caretaker. There were people before me that made it happen. There'll be people after me that made it. I happen to be here in this moment, so I need to take advantage and enjoy this moment. And I certainly will be when this happens.
And as the caretaker of the Grand, the history of the place is incredible. Take me through a little bit of that.
The Grand opened its doors in 1883, in August of 1883. So let's put that into perspective first. There was no electricity. There was no indoor plumbing. There were gas lights and there were outhouses. And this building, right where we are right now. Chester Arthur was president of the United States. The Eiffel Tower hadn't been built yet. Washington Monument was half finished. Telephone wasn't commonplace, not even the one that was wired into your wall. Coca-Cola hadn't been invented. The hamburger hadn't been invented. It's old. It's old. It's been here a long time. And when I think about, people ask me all the time, it's one of the great questions, right? The Grand is allegedly the most haunted theater in the state, one of the most haunted buildings in the state. And if you believe in that sort of stuff, it's absolutely true. And they ask me, have you seen anything? Have you heard anything? And I say, when I'm in here alone, and it's absolutely quiet, what I like to think I hear is 140 years of laughter and applause. When you think of the generations who have been in this place over the years, And as the theater evolved, it was many different things. It started, though, as it is now. It was a place for quality performances. It was a place to gather in the community. It was a place for special events. And yes, over the years, vaudeville turned into silent movies, turned into talking movies, turned into adult movies for a little while in the history. And then came the renovation and the Renaissance, and we were right back to where we started. There's a great quote that I like to talk about from a man named John Williams. He had my job around 1900. So, and they called him Honest John, which is a moniker I've not heard, for me, but it's all right. Honest John did an interview for the newspaper, and they asked him what the challenge was of operating what then called the Grand Opera House. And he said, well, the biggest challenge is you want to do the highest quality entertainment for the lowest possible ticket price. And I was like, well, that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed at all. The challenge is the challenge is the challenge, But over the years, this has been something for a lot of people. The community players perform here several times a year. They've been doing it since, the 40s and 50s. I've seen their name on marquees. And generations have performed here. People in this audience performed, did summer musicals on the stage or community musicals on the stage. Doing what I do here might be more meaningful than if I was doing big shows in a big city. I haven't missed it. It's not a missed opportunity. I am perfectly content being the guy who ran the theater that convinced the Four Phantoms to come and do their public television special on our stage. Or, one of the rare theaters that Jeff Daniels does when he goes out on tour. Or everything from, the 8-year-old kid to Debbie Reynolds. It's, who gets to do that? I get to do that. That's just fine. It's all right. You can't describe it. And that's the way I feel about what's going to happen now. You have no idea. I don't have any idea yet of what this will be like when it all falls into place. It's going to be a wild ride. I can't wait. One of my great mentors once said to me, was two, I think they were older women, leaving the theater together. And one turns to the other and she says, wouldn't it have been a shame if we had missed that? Live performance is an art form that is unique to anything. You don't know what might happen. First of all, it's never quite the same at any given time. And the banter between things is always different. The audience reaction is always different. And here, the audience is part of the show. I have a new appreciation. I don't do it every time, but I try to remember to thank the audience. So I'm really appreciative when people, I usually use the words come out and play, and they decide to come out and play again. The whole art of going to the theater has changed, even in the course of my career. My favorite audience member is the guy who got dragged by someone to see the show. And he gets to the show, and you could almost hear the inner dialogue. I can go in jeans? I don't have to get dressed up? And they go, I can have a beer? I can have a beer at my seat in my jeans and watch this show? Well, this didn't hurt, And it is so true of this place. Getting a person to come here the second time is never hard.
The Grand, it's going to be a special night in a special place.
So there's 4 very different looks of Phantom up there, and you find yourself trying to figure out which one you're going to look at. And audiences don't admit it, but you can tell at the end that some of them have chosen their favorite Phantom at that point, which is like choosing your favorite child or your favorite grandkid. That's going to be, hopefully we leave and we go, wouldn't it have been a shame if we had missed that?